So the forEach method on an array takes a callback as its first parameter. Callback, simply put, is just a function that is being passed as an argument to another function. So we've already used them. Add event listener, the second argument, is another function, right? So a function as an argument to another function is just called callback. It's just a much shorter way of saying that. So why? Because that function's probably going to call that function, right? It's going to call it back. So the function that we pass into forEach is itself going to be passed an argument. Remember in add event listener, the callback that we provide gets the event as an argument. In forEach, the function that we provide here will get each item in the array as an argument. So let's just make an anonymous function here. I can expect each individual veggie as an argument. You could just name it. You can name it something else. You can name it obj or thing or whatever. It's just an argument, right? You can give it whatever name you want. Name it something sensible. If it's an array of vegetables, you may as well call it veggie. And so that'll be passed in. You're not the one calling this function, right? JavaScript's calling it for you for each item in the array. So now I can just say console.log veggie. I don't have to deal with I. I don't have to do the I++ nonsense. It's just a little simpler, more straightforward. And it wouldn't have to be an anonymous function that you write right there. It could be any function. So if I had a function called print stuff, takes an argument, stuff, calls console log stuff. I can say veggies for each print stuff. Does the same thing if I do it right. What's your problem? Missing initializer and const declaration. Yep. Const print stuff equals function is what I meant. Yep. Totally works. A lot of times if you're using forEach, it's probably a function you're not going to use anywhere else, so you'll often do it as an anonymous function. Whoop. So it might be more interesting. Let's make a function here. It takes a veggie as its argument. If you look at the documentation, it also takes the index and the array itself. You don't need to use those necessarily, but sometimes you want to do something with I for whatever reason. If you do, then yeah, your callback function will receive it as a second argument if you need it. So maybe I want to say I less than 3 veggie, whatever that is. So forEach does the same thing to everything in an array. There's a related function called map, which does the same thing to everything in an array and returns the result in another array. Takes all the collects all the return values and puts it in another array. So I don't know. How about const statements of love equals veggies dot. We'll just do the same thing, except I'll use map instead of forEach. So like forEach, it runs the same function to everything in an array, but it doesn't just do that stuff. It also collects the return values. So I could, instead of console logging these things, I could just return that string. And then what is statements of love? It is an array containing I love tomato, I love zucchini, I love asparagus. Good stuff. Useful stuff. let's see if we can apply our newfound knowledge to our spell book.